14 cents. That is what brought down a $2.1 billion espionage pipeline. No gunshot. No defector running for the border. 14 cents on a routine maintenance invoice. Right now, in a quiet office building in Crystal City, Virginia, a team of federal agents is moving down a fluorescent-lit hallway. Their footsteps are muffled by standard-issue commercial carpet, but the tension is thick enough to choke on. They are not carrying rifles. They are carrying handcuffs, flex cuffs, and a federal warrant authorized at the highest levels of the Department of Justice. On the other side of a badge access door sits a man who has spent the last 14 months thinking he was invisible. He thought his encrypted messages were unbreakable, routed through layers of obfuscation so dense that even the most sophisticated signals intelligence platforms would discard the traffic as background noise. He thought the shell companies protecting his payments were bulletproof, woven through international corporate law that would take years to untangle. But nobody was looking for him. They were looking for a number that should not exist. And by the time they followed that number to his desk, it was already too late. He had been watched, tracked. His every keystroke logged, his every movement cataloged by a team of surveillance specialists operating out of a nondescript van parked 3 blocks away. And the clock was ticking down to 0. It did not begin with a tip from a confidential informant. It did not begin with a wiretap authorized by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. It began in a windowless basement room at the Defense Finance and Accounting Service in Indianapolis. The room smelled of burnt coffee and recycled air. A junior auditor, just 6 months out of training, was running a routine batch of automated invoice reconciliations for Atlantic Fleet Logistics. Thousands of transactions a day flowed through the system. Maintenance contracts, fuel transfers, dry dock leases, ordnance handling fees. The software flagged a single entry, a billing charge for a replacement valve seal on a naval logistics ship. The charge was 14 cents over the approved contract rate. 14 cents. A rounding error. A glitch. Any experienced auditor would have clicked approve and moved on, trying to clear the queue before the end of the shift. But this junior reviewer did not click approve. They pulled the thread. They noticed that the overbilling was applied to a specific line item, a secondary gasket kit that was not part of the original contract scope. When they expanded the ledger, they found that the 14-cent overbilling was not an isolated glitch. It was a recurring surcharge. Exactly 14 cents, applied to dozens of invoices over the past 8 months, all linked to a specific maintenance subcontractor based in Newport News. The subcontractor had a spotless record. They had been servicing Navy vessels for a decade, but the billing codes were slightly altered. Just enough to route the microtransactions into a shadow account. The reviewer sent the file up the chain. The file landed on the desk of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and from there, it crossed the river to the FBI's Washington field office. Because when investigators mapped the subcontractor, the 14-cent anomaly stopped looking like bad accounting. It started looking like a digital dead drop. Someone was altering the billing code, just barely, just enough to route those microtransactions into a shadow account. And that shadow account was quietly laundering the money into cryptocurrency. Someone inside the Navy's logistics command was getting paid. The question was, for what? The date was March 14th, 2026. The FBI assigned a counterintelligence squad based out of the Washington field office. The case was designated Operation Iron Tide. The first obstacle was immediate. The transactions were tiny. The cryptocurrency mixing protocols were sophisticated, designed to fragment the funds into thousands of microtransactions that bounced across a dozen different blockchains before settling. There was no obvious communication intercept. For 3 months, physical surveillance yielded nothing. The subject never met with a foreign diplomat. He never visited a dead drop site under a bridge. He went to work, he went to the gym, and he went home to a modest apartment in Alexandria. The surveillance team was running out of reasons to keep watching him. But the financial analysts at the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control took over the money trail. They peeled back the shell companies, layer by layer, a holding firm in Delaware, a logistics consultancy in Cyprus, a tech startup in Singapore, and finally, the crypto wallet. They mapped the wallet's on-chain history. The payments were small, fragmented, and designed to look like automated vendor payouts. But Treasury traced the origin of the funds. The money was coming from a known front company operating on behalf of the Ministry of State Security, China. Before we get to the surveillance and the eventual raid, you have to understand who this subject was. He was not an ideological zealot. He was not a radicalized extremist. He was a mid-level logistics contractor, a GS-13 named Thomas Vance. He had a resume that screamed Middle America. He grew up in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. His father was a regional manager for a hardware store chain. His mother taught middle school math. He had served 6 years in the Navy as a yeoman, handling administrative logistics on a destroyer. When he got out, he parlayed that experience into a civilian contract position. He was quiet. He was unremarkable. He wore polo shirts and khakis to the office. He drove a 10-year-old Honda Accord. He had a wife, a daughter in elementary school, and a mortgage with a slightly above-average interest rate. But there were cracks in the facade. 6 months before the 14-cent Anomaly appeared, Vance had been quietly drowning in debt. He had taken out a second mortgage to cover his mother's medical bills after a sudden cancer diagnosis. He had maxed out 3 credit cards trying to keep up with the payments. He was borrowing from his retirement account. He was desperate. And desperation is the single most dangerous vulnerability in the world of counterintelligence. Foreign intelligence services do not typically recruit by ideology. They recruit by leverage. They find the person who is drowning, and they throw them an anchor instead of a life raft. Vance was the perfect target. He had access. He had financial distress, and he had a false sense of security. He believed that because he was a nobody, because he sat in a cubicle and processed paperwork, nobody would ever look at him. He was almost right. The target was not just stealing money. He was selling access. The FBI obtained a Title III wiretap on the subject's personal devices. They did not intercept phone calls. The subject never spoke about the operation. Instead, they watched his network traffic. He was embedding stolen data into the metadata of routine logistics reports, dry dock schedules, maintenance downtimes, refueling routes for 18 naval logistics ships. He was handing the adversary a real-time map of the Atlantic Fleet's supply chain. I spent hours going through the court filings for this case, and one detail kept nagging me. The mole was not a high-ranking admiral with access to nuclear launch codes. He was a mid-level logistics officer, a GS-13 contractor with a standard secret clearance. He sat in a cubicle. He processed paperwork. But in the modern military, paperwork is power. If you know a ship is going into dry dock for 6 weeks, you know exactly when and where it is vulnerable. The surveillance continued through the sweltering summer of 2026. The FBI brought in the National Security Agency to help decrypt the embedded payloads. NSA cyber operators confirmed the worst. The subject was uploading classified schematics for automated dry dock cranes. He was sending the exact GPS coordinates of secure fuel depots. The network was operating smoothly, silently, right under the nose of the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency. The raid was planned for late August, but the operation hit a critical snag. A massive Atlantic hurricane suddenly shifted its trajectory, slamming into the Virginia coast. The storm knocked out power to 3 federal buildings, severing the secure connection to the surveillance drones monitoring the subject. For 11 hours, the FBI was flying blind. They had no eyes on the target. If he sensed the heat, if he realized the storm was an opportunity, he could wipe his encrypted drives and vanish. The tech teams worked through the night, rigging mobile microwave relays to bypass the downed fiber lines. Just before dawn, the feed was restored. The subject was sitting at his desk, sipping coffee, completely unaware. But the hurricane brought something else, a delay in the Navy's maintenance schedule. The subject suddenly altered his routine. He started staying late at the office, accessing secure terminals he rarely used. The FBI's technical operators watched his keystrokes in real time. He was compiling a master list, a comprehensive document detailing the operational readiness of the entire Atlantic logistics fleet. What's most surprising about this case isn't the betrayal itself. It's the math, the contrast between what he was paid and what he gave away. Over 14 months, the foreign handler deposited exactly $48,000 in fragmented crypto bribes. $48,000, the price of a used luxury sedan. But the classified supply chain data he handed over? It compromised 18 naval logistics ships. The estimated strategic damage was valued at over $2.1 billion. He sold the security of a fleet for the price of a car. Here's the take that will probably get us flack. The Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency failed here. They run continuous evaluations on millions of cleared personnel, looking for exactly this kind of financial vulnerability. Yet a GS-13 contractor was able to set up a crypto wallet, alter a military billing system, and leak classified data for over a year without triggering a single alert. The system designed to catch moles was asleep at the wheel. It took a junior auditor looking for 14 cents to do the job of a multi-billion-dollar intelligence apparatus. By September, the investigation had reached a boiling point. The subject was communicating with his handler more frequently. The embedded data drops were happening every 48 hours. The FBI knew they had to move. But moving too early meant they might miss the handler, the invisible figure pulling the strings from overseas. Moving too late meant the master list would be gone forever. Put yourself in the lead agent's shoes for a second. You have a subject who is actively transmitting data. You have the NSA confirming the payload is highly classified. You have Treasury confirming the money is coming from Beijing. Do you wait and risk the entire Atlantic Fleet's readiness being sold? Or do you move and risk losing the mastermind? What would you have done at 3 a.m. with no backup, knowing that one wrong move could let a foreign intelligence service walk away clean? The decision came from the highest levels of the Justice Department. The master list was too dangerous to let leave the country. The order was given. Execute Operation Iron Tide. Before the raid, the FBI's evidence response teams had to rehearse the seizure protocols. They knew that if the subject had even 30 seconds of warning, he could trigger a remote wipe on his encrypted drives. They brought in a specialized cyber technician whose sole job was to physically freeze the terminal the moment the door was breached. They practiced the entry in a mock-up room built in an empty warehouse in Quantico. They ran the drill 17 times. 17 times, they breached the door, crossed the room, and secured the laptop. The average time from door breach to laptop freeze was 2.4 seconds. That was the margin of error. 2.4 seconds between preserving the evidence and losing the entire case. It is October 9th, 2026. The clock reads 6:15 in the morning. The air is cold. A convoy of unmarked SUVs and Bearcat armored vehicles moves through the pre-dawn darkness of the Crystal City Commercial District. There are 3 target locations: the subject's apartment in Alexandria, a storage unit in Springfield, and the primary strike, the defense contractor office in Crystal City. At exactly 6:30, the lead vehicle stops. Federal agents move out. They carry a battering ram. They carry flashbangs. They carry flex cuffs. The point man hits the badge access door of the contractor office. It is locked. He breaches it. The heavy steel frame splinters under the force of the ram. The subject is already at his desk. He is an early riser. He is typing. The agents flood the room. Federal agents! Hands in the air! Step away from the terminal. The subject freezes. He looks at the screen. He reaches for the encrypted laptop. He never makes it. 2 agents tackle him to the floor. His face hits the static-resistant carpet. The handcuffs click shut. Simultaneously, 2 miles away, a second team breaches the Alexandria apartment. They find a hidden floor safe behind a heavy bookshelf. Inside the safe are 12 encrypted solid-state drives and stacks of untraceable bearer bonds. At the storage unit in Springfield, a third team cuts the padlock. Inside, they find a secondary server. A server that has been syncing directly with the foreign adversary's network. The entire network is dismantled in exactly 11 minutes. The evidence is walked out in black evidence bags. The encrypted drives are tagged. The classified documents are secured. The subject is walked out of the building in leg irons. He does not say a word. By noon, 4 individuals are in federal custody. The logistics officer, 2 crypto brokers who facilitated the laundering, and a local contractor who provided physical access to the secure terminals. They are charged under 18 United States Code, Sections 793, 794, and 951. Gathering and transmitting national defense information. Espionage. Acting as an unregistered foreign agent. They are looking at decades in federal prison. The money was seized. The drives were decrypted. The network was broken. But the foreign handler? The cutout working for the Ministry of State Security? He is already gone. He boarded a commercial flight out of JFK Airport 2 days before the raid. He is back in Beijing, beyond the reach of United States extradition. The interrogation of Thomas Vance began exactly 47 minutes after he was processed at the Federal Detention Center. He was placed in a small, windowless room with gray walls and a single metal table bolted to the floor. The fluorescent light above him buzzed faintly, a constant, irritating hum that is designed to wear down a subject's mental resistance over time. 2 FBI special agents sat across from him. One was the lead case agent, a veteran counterintelligence officer with 20 years of experience breaking spies. The other was a behavioral analyst whose job was to watch Vance's body language, his micro-expressions, the way he folded his hands, the direction his eyes darted when a question made him uncomfortable. Vance looked broken. The bravado, the belief that he was invisible, had evaporated the moment the handcuffs clicked shut. He asked for a lawyer. The agents obliged. But when his public defender arrived, the reality of the situation set in. The FBI had the keystroke logs. They had the crypto wallet traced to Beijing. They had the encrypted drives, and the NSA had already cracked the encryption. The evidence was insurmountable. Over the course of 3 days, Vance slowly began to talk. He did not confess outright. But he confirmed details. He confirmed that he had been recruited by a man he knew only as Mr. Lin, who had approached him at a logistics conference in Las Vegas in late 2024. Lin had been charming, sympathetic, and generous. He bought Vance drinks. He listened to Vance complain about his financial struggles. And 2 weeks later, an envelope with $10,000 in cash arrived at Vance's apartment. No instructions, just a phone number on a blank card. Vance called the number. And that was the beginning of the end. He told the agents that he never met Lynn again. All communication was done through encrypted messaging and dead drops in the metadata of Navy logistics reports. He said he did not know the full scope of the damage he was causing. He said he tried to stop twice. But the money kept coming, and the debt kept mounting, and the fear of what Lynn would do if he stopped was greater than the fear of getting caught. The evidence processing phase of Operation Iron Tide was a logistical operation in itself. The FBI's Computer Analysis and Response Team, known as CART, took custody of the 12 encrypted solid-state drives seized from the Alexandria apartment. The drives were transported in shielded, Faraday cage containers to a secure facility in Quantico, Virginia. The NSA provided a team of cryptanalysts to assist with the decryption. The encryption was military grade, a layered protocol that would have taken a standard commercial computer decades to brute force. But the NSA had specialized hardware, quantum annealing processors that could reduce the decryption time from decades to days. Within 72 hours, the drives were cracked. What they found was staggering. Over 1.2 thousand individual classified files, 540 dry dock schedules, 380 GPS coordinates for secure fuel routes, 180 schematics for automated terminal systems, and 100 operational readiness reports. The sheer volume of data was overwhelming. The FBI had to bring in a team of naval intelligence officers just to assess the damage. They spent weeks cross-referencing every file to determine what had been compromised and what the strategic implications were. The conclusion was grim. The Chinese Ministry of State Security now had a complete, real-time picture of the Atlantic Fleet's logistics infrastructure. They knew which ships were operational, which were in maintenance, and where the vulnerable points were in the supply chain. The two crypto brokers who facilitated the laundering were picked up in a coordinated raid in New York and Los Angeles. One was a 26-year-old former tech worker who ran a cryptocurrency mixing service from his apartment. He had no idea he was laundering money for a foreign intelligence service. He thought he was providing a privacy service for wealthy clients. The other was a 40-year-old financial intermediary who had connections to overseas banking networks. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had been taking a 5% cut of every transaction. The local contractor who provided physical access to the secure terminals was a janitor who had been paid $500 a month to leave a specific door unlocked on specific nights. He told the FBI he thought he was helping someone smuggle out office supplies. He was charged as an accessory. The Operation Iron Tide case file is closed. The mole is in a federal detention center. The Atlantic Logistics Fleet has updated its security protocols. The billing code has been patched. The junior auditor received a commendation. Looking back, the real question isn't why he did it. $48,000 is a cheap price for a soul. The real question is how a 14-cent anomaly slipped through automated security filters for 8 straight months. We dug through months of surveillance logs for this story, and here's what didn't make the news. The subject almost quit 3 months in. He was paranoid. He thought a car was following him. It was just a rideshare driver lost in the neighborhood. But the paranoia wasn't enough to stop him. Greed is a powerful motivator. One detail that stuck with me is the subject's desk. When the agents photographed the scene, right next to the encrypted laptop was a framed photo of his family, a reminder of the life he was supposed to be protecting, the life he threw away for a used car's worth of cryptocurrency. If you would have missed the 14-cent signal too, subscribe to Federal Casebook and tell us in the comments which thread you'd have pulled first. The network was dismantled, but it wasn't the billion-dollar intelligence system that caught him. It was a human being, looking at a screen, noticing a number that didn't belong. Here is the ledger of Operation Iron Tide. 18 naval logistics ships compromised, $2.1 billion in classified supply chain data exposed, $48,000 in crypto bribes paid, 14 months of surveillance, 12 encrypted drives seized, 4 arrests, 11 minutes to breach, 1 foreign handler escaped, 14 cents to start the investigation, and 1 junior auditor who pulled the thread.